Hello and welcome to my session. My name is Andrea Heard, and I'm so excited to be able to present today for the Ogden Museum. On today, we celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Again, I'm so excited to be here and to share my presentation. Today, I will be presenting on 8 great facts about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Really quickly, I'm going to give you guys a few tidbits about myself and who I am. One more time, my name is Andrea Heard. I am a native New Orleanian. I'm an educator, and I have been an educator here for 11 years now. I am also the founder and CEO of A&H Consulting, LLC, an education and project management firm. I'm also a proud mom of a 15-year-old high school student who I love and adore. If you guys need to get in touch with me at any point after our presentation, feel free to visit my website at axmissheard.com or to email me at info@axmissheard.com. All right, so let's get started. One more time. Today, we are going to talk about 8 great facts about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Ready? All right. Fact number 8. King entered college at the age of 15 years old at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. King entered Morehouse at the young age, and as a bright young man, King was able to skip grades 9 and 12 of high school. In 1948, he graduated from Morehouse with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in sociology. That fall, he enrolled in Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. While attending Crozer, he also attended the University of Pennsylvania as well. Fact number 7. King's practices of nonviolence were inspired by Gandhi and Henry David Thoreau. From their teachings, he created his 6 key principles of nonviolence. So we all know that Dr. Martin Luther King was all about a nonviolent approach, right, guys? So let me explain a little bit more about it. He was first introduced to the concept of nonviolence when he read Henry David Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience as a freshman at Morehouse College. Having grown up in Atlanta and witnessed segregation and racism every day, King was fascinated by the idea of refusing to cooperate with an evil system. In 1950, as a student at Crozer Theological Seminary, King heard a talk by Dr. Mordecai Johnson, president of Howard University. Dr. Johnson, who had recently traveled in India, spoke about the life and teachings of Mohandas K. Gandhi. Gandhi, King later wrote, was the first person to transform Christian love into a powerful force for social change. Gandhi's stress on love and social reform. Gandhi's stress on love and nonviolence gave King the method for social reform that he had been seeking. Though he was inspired by Gandhi and intellectually committed to nonviolence, he did not experience the power of nonviolence until the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Though the practical experience of leading nonviolent protests, King became to understand how nonviolence could become a way of life, applicable to all situations. From there, King created the 6 notions of nonviolence and used those as the foundation for his work. Fact number 6. Martin Luther King Jr. was the co-pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church with his father. Can you guys imagine you being co-pastor with your daddy? I mean, I know I couldn't, but here we are. We usually say his name is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but we cannot forget to say our beloved doctor was a reverend. When King first started pastoring, he was the co-pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church right alongside his dad. This church is also where the recently elected George Reverend and Senator-elect Raphael Warnock serves now. He is actually their senior pastor. So guys, if you're looking at the presentation, you can see there's a picture of Mr. Warnock right over here. Number 5, King's letter from Birmingham jail was a comparison of the Black civil rights movement and white supremacy. In 1963, King, along with the SCLC, Ralph Albert Abernathy, and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth were arrested in Birmingham, Alabama for parading, demonstrating, and boycotting segregation. King then wrote his letter in response to white Alabama clergymen who were against him and his nonviolent methods. King addressed accusations that the civil rights movement was extreme by first disputing that King himself was a moderate. However, his devotion to the cause, he viewed himself as an extremist. He says, "What kind of extremist will we be? Will we be extremists for hate or love?" In his letter, he states, "Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people that mean no good. But from those that are goodwill, it is expected for them to be able to understand such a situation." King's letter was indeed a comparison of the civil rights movement and white supremacy. He is blatantly stating that they are not the same. Fact number 4. King and Malcolm X only met once. I know that's hard to believe, but here's the story behind it. On March 26, 1964, Martin and Malcolm were on Capitol Hill attending Senate debate on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Though Martin and Malcolm were seen as opposites or adversaries in Black freedom, Malcolm advocated for equal rights for Black people and respected King's leadership. And by the end of their lives, King was becoming more serious and militant in his views for economic justice and more vocal in his criticism on the Vietnam War, becoming more like Malcolm in a sense of Black nationalism. Number 3, 1963, King led the March on Washington, which was the largest civil rights protest ever held. The purpose of the march was to advocate for the civil and economic rights of African Americans. An estimated 250,000 people attended the March on Washington, arriving in Washington, D.C. by planes, trains, cars, and buses from all over the country. I mean, guys, have you ever been to an event that had 250,000 people there? Like, can you imagine that? I can't. The event focused on employment discrimination, civil rights abuses against African Americans, Latinos, and other disenfranchised groups, and support for Civil Rights Act that the Kennedy administration was attempting to pass through Congress. But the principal demand was comprehensive and effective civil rights legislation, and that came about within a few years later. Like, look at all of those people. Fact number 2. This is one of my favorite. King's I Have a Dream speech was heavily inspired by Miss Mahalia Jackson. Check this out. I Have a Dream is a public speech that was delivered by American civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963, in which he called for civil and economic rights and an end to racism in the United States. But why is Mahalia Jackson important? Jackson, known as the Queen of Gospel, was a musical legend who helped bring gospel from church to mass audiences. She was also instrumental to the civil rights movement, especially as a good friend of King's. She frequently accompanied King to perform at rallies and events. Her voice became the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. Jackson was devoted to King and accompanied him into most hostile parts of the segregated South for rallies and demonstrations. Even in moments when King felt discouraged, he would call Jackson on the phone just to hear her sing. And if you guys have ever seen the movie Selma, you have seen this. There's a shot in the movie Selma where they show this part. But this bond of mutual respect and inspiration between King and Jackson came at a pivotal moment during the 1963 March on Washington. When creating the speech, King struggled with what he wanted to speak about. His speech was supposed to be kept to 5 minutes, and he originally thought the speech should be read at a lower key, since he was speaking to a broad audience about controversial themes. But during delivery, King started improvising a bit when he reached a sentence that felt kind of clunky. Instead of calling on the crowd to go back to their communities as members of the International Association for Advancement of Creative Dissatisfaction, he went on to say, go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and the ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow the situation can and will be changed. It was at that moment, says King's advisor, Clarence Jones, that Mahalia Jackson cried out, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." What a sight that must have been to see. She is one of the world's greatest gospel singers, shouting out to one of the world's greatest Baptist preachers. He then takes the text of that written speech that's been prepared and he slides it to the side. Then King started speaking completely off the cuff. That ad lib became, "I have a dream." Cool, huh? And last but not least, for my last fact on Martin Luther King, it is dedicated to Miss Coretta Scott King. Martin and Coretta were married for 15 years. She is who began the fight for the justice of her husband's assassination. Let me explain. Martin and Coretta Scott King were definitely a love supreme. Coretta Scott King, daughter of an Alabama farmer who helped to grow the political maturity of her husband, took control of herself after King's assassination. She had been an activist during her college years and was responsible for many of his thoughts around fighting for the poor, supporting homosexual marriage, and protesting the Vietnam War. She is also responsible for suing the United States government for ordering the assassination of her husband, who had plans to run for president. Through his lawsuit, we learned that Dr. King was not solely killed by gunshots of Memphis police officer Frank Strouser, but pillow suffocation. Lula Mae Shelby, the surgical aide on duty at St. Joseph's Hospital that night, is also to thank for sharing what she saw and heard that night at the hospital. She went home and painfully called a meeting with her whole family and cried and revealed all that she had witnessed. Though Coretta demanded that the media share the truth in full, it never ever happened. So let this remind us that it's always important to search beyond the truth of what it is that we see, to not take the work that we do in vain, and that we have to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. Why? Because it was a Black woman who allowed us or enabled us or supported us in doing so. Okay. So guys, these are the sources of the information on all of the facts that I have given us today. And I want to again wish you all a happy, healthy, safe, loving Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On this day, I hope everyone gets themselves some rest. Everyone is reminded of what it was that he stood for, and that we remember that through love and connection that we can transform the world, because that's what Dr. Martin Luther King really wanted us to do. Again, my name is Andrea Heard, and I'm very, very excited and always happy to be able to share and to be able to continue educating and helping everyone in need. So, on behalf of myself and the Ogden Museum, I am signing off. Again, if you guys need to get in contact with me, below is my website at askmissheard.com, as well as my email address at info@askmissheard.com. All right, guys, you guys take care.